Hello, and welcome to Sasquatch and Sunflower. I'm Sasquatch.
And I'm Sunflower.
We're glad you can join us as we embark on our first foray into crafting terrain together.
It's terrain time!
It started with a cardboard tube and an idea.
We began construction on the Alyddel Tower in March 2024 while I was visiting Sunflower in Kansas.
To get started, I glued together a stack of XPS foam to create a rock foundation for the tower and used some popsicle sticks to build a door.
Sunflower glued the planks to some craft foam. I cut the hole for the door and hot glued it to the inside. I then began to cut and glue craft foam dots to form the rocks for the stone walls and the outline to the door.
Like an actual stonemason, placement requires some rotation and just playing around with how they fit together to see what works.
After I returned home, Sunflower was itching to continue work on the project, so we discussed how we wanted to proceed with the design.
We knew that we wanted a platform at the top of the tower so that minis could stand and survey their kingdom, or archers could rain death upon their enemies. But we didn't know whether we wanted it to just have a roof or a smaller tower on top of the tower.
So I had a spice bottle, a used spice bottle, that worked well because it could hold 1 to 2 minis comfortably on the lid.
I used a similar spice bottle as well as some paper and painter's tape to mock up a version of the tower with crenellations and a version with a conical roof.
And we decided on
Crenellations. I grabbed some corrugated cardboard and EVA foam and began to construct the platform for the top of the tower.
Sunflower used a ruler to divide the cardboard circle like a pizza into little wedges, and used those sections as guides when she hot glued the crenellations into place.
I cut some more foam to build corbels for the underside of the platform.
She's measuring the top of the cardboard tube because she wanted the platform to fit the top snugly.
The corbels are a simple design, just 3 pieces of foam stacked together.
And there it is on the top of the tower.
We decided it might be cool to add some lights inside the tower. I had some fairy lights on hand that were on a string, so we put those inside the tower just to see how it would look with the room lights on and in the dark.
Looks pretty good, so.
We're excited to see how the lighting looks in the final project. I cut some thin strips of EVA foam and glued them around the edge of the platform to hide the corrugation.
We ended up filling that seam with a little bit of hot glue and some spackle, but that'll be in an upcoming video.
Then it was time to do some more stonework. So I cut out lots and lots of dots from thin craft foam and began gluing them in place.
You're rocking it. The biggest thing when doing this is you just kind of find the open spots, you just kind of find what looks good there, and then you just kind of throw it in. And, and one of the reasons why we kind of kept this footage in is so that you can kind of see that it takes time to do this stuff. It's not a one and done, like you don't just glue like 1 or 2 of these things and then you call it good. It takes a while to get everything done.
That's true. And then after you fill it in, you go back and find any larger gaps and cut some tinier stones for the space.
Yeah, and then you put them in. And so when it gets done, though, it looks like a realistic kind of rock face.
I painted the inside of the tube black so that when you look in through the windows you won't see just plain old cardboard. But we're probably going to add some diffusion to the windows when we install them, so we don't need lots of detail on the inside.
Sunflower used a wood-burning tool and the stylus tip on the hot wire foam cutter to add beveling to the stones around the door and windows. She also divided the trim into individual stones.
I tried to use some foil and a rock to add texture to the stones, but they just weren't taking the texture the way I was hoping they would. Here's where I made a mistake. I know that people use heat to form and shape EVA, and I thought maybe if I heated up the craft foam, it would take the texture from the foil a little bit better. What actually ended up happening is the craft foam shrunk up like pepperoni in the oven.
It just disappears. It's crazy how fast that stuff shrinks. Yeah.
Live and learn. It doesn't work very well on the thin foam.
Yeah. Honestly, you're not going to notice it in the final product, so it's really not that big of a deal.
Fortunately, I was able to repair the damage. So in the end, we learned that glued down craft foam plus heat gun equals bad idea. I coated the tower in gesso. Gesso is a primer that is used to seal canvases for paint. It adds rigidity and protects the canvas because mediums like oil paints can be very corrosive. It also has a nice toothy texture that takes paint well.
We planned to use spray paint as our base color, so the gesso will also protect EVA and XPS foam from being melted by the accelerants in the spray cans. Additionally, a layer of gesso makes painting easier and more efficient by sealing all of the materials like cardboard, XPS, and EVA foams. These are very thirsty materials that will soak up paint like crazy without a sealant.
I used drywall joint compound to create a sort of mortar between the stones.
You can also use spackle for this. Both materials are made with gypsum, which gives them a bit of a grainy texture. When you put a wash over it, which we'll get to in a later video, it kind of goes in between all those little grains, and when you dry brush, you get that real nice highlight.
I started off by putting it on with my hands, but began to realize that I was either applying it too thick and had to do a lot of work to smooth it out, or I was knocking it back out of the crevices because it was sticking to me instead of the tower. Then I tried applying it with a popsicle stick and found that worked a lot better. The popsicle stick allowed me to really push the joint compound into the crevices, and then I used a foam brush with water to help smooth it out as I went.
And you can also use your finger, like if you dip your finger in water, you can do the same thing. So either way works.
This project was partially inspired by photos we had seen of the straining tower at Lake Vyrnwy in Wales. We intended for our tower to stand on a rocky precipice in the middle of a body of water, though at that point we hadn't decided what that body of water was going to be.
Since we knew we wanted the tower to be surrounded by water, we needed some sort of ramp bridge thing that would allow minis to visit the tower without taking a swim. I cut some more EVA foam to begin building the ramp.
Contact cement is one of the best ways to connect pieces of EVA foam together, but the fumes are very bad for your brain. So, safety first.
I put on my respirator with organic vapor filters. You don't need a lot. You want to spread it out across your piece, and then you have to let it dry for about 15 or 20 minutes. It'll be tacky to the touch at that point, but not really sticky or goopy anymore. But when you connect two pieces that both have contact cement on them, the pieces will adhere.
Sunflower drew some arches on one side of the bridge and cut out those openings. She assembled the two sides of the bridge and the roadway, then cut and glued pieces of foam to create the underside of the arches. Each step guides the next. The first arches guided the curve of the underside and allowed her to cut the arches on the other side of the bridge. So then we had two tunnels that passed through our bridge.
This was just kind of an improvised process. I didn't go into this part with a strict plan in mind, just kind of fit the pieces in and then cut them as I went. But it worked out pretty well, and we were able to use joint compound to fill it in so that it looks like a smooth surface. I'm using the wood burner to help level off some of those edges, trying to get the piece as a whole to sit a little flatter.
She added rock texture to the sides of the bridge, considering where to lay each stone, including details like a capstone at the top of the arch. And then she begins adding rock texture on the roadway itself, which is super satisfying to watch.
Both the black and the white pieces are EVA foam. The black is from floor mats, and it took the wood burner beautifully. It created really nice lines.
In fact, Jeremy from Black Magic Craft did a video where he was creating cyberpunk/futuristic terrain boards using those floor mats. He uses them because they're lightweight and flexible. He also used pieces of craft foam, EVA foam, to actually make a little binding so that you could fold the playmat in half.
Oh, that's cool. What a great idea. The white foam was specifically sold for cosplay crafting. It was a little bit stickier and didn't make quite as smooth of lines as the black foam.
More rocky, more rocky, more rocky.
Hey, are they talking about us?
It can't be. We're from the future. We don't even exist yet.
Guess we'll see you all later then.
In the future.
I used more XPS foam to build up the base of the bridge, as well as the surrounding landforms.
We were using XPS foam to create the rocks, but when Sunflower came to Washington to visit me in June of 2024, we stopped off at a local beach and picked up a bunch of rocks and bark and sand and other materials. We're going to use some of those natural elements for this project as well in future videos. She started adding some of the stone texture to the XPS foam underneath the ramp bridge. And this piece of masonite that we had as a base was our original piece that we were going to use, and as you'll see, we didn't end up using it.
The project outgrew its base.
It got pretty big.
Ended up trying to make it look a little more stonish and less like
Carved stone.
Yeah. More like that was the natural element that it was sitting on in the end.
Yeah.
It just felt like it made more sense.
Yeah.
So that was something that changed from the original plan there.
It is.
I went back to work on the base for the tower, which we had started when Sasquatch visited in March. We had some pieces that were stacked together and glued.
We weren't sure exactly what it was going to look like at the time. We just knew that we wanted this kind of a rocky base for it to sit on.
I added more details to the rocks so that the tower would look like it's actually part of the landscape rather than something that just mysteriously landed there. I began to build up the other end of the ramp bridge thing where it meets the land, and we had a discussion about how we wanted to handle that.
We had a couple of ideas about this project. We thought about having the roadway end abruptly, dropping off onto a stair with two pillars at the end, or another option was extending the roadway into a more gradual slope. And this is what we meant by, we started with a smaller base and then outgrew it. We decided that we liked the road extension better, but that meant extending the base as well.
So I began to build up the platform here. Didn't want to use solid XPS foam, so there's some gaps there that I created some little
Shims.
that's the word, some shims to fit in there to help support it. Once I got those glued in, it was back to the roadway.
So she's kind of measuring to get the size of the roadway. And then we realized that we kind of wanted to have it curved. And so, back to the contact cement.
I cut 3 pieces of foam that would be connected together. One was notched so that it would create that curve.
Now Sunflower is just kind of beveling it down so that when it gets to the end, it will sit flush. And so now you can see the curved piece.
Now that the shape of the road is good, to get back outside to the wood burner and carve some stone details.
So satisfying. Almost ASMR. Just watch that all day long.
That's sound.
I know. ASMR sound, but dang nabbit, that is just so freaking satisfying.
Is the S sound. So AEMR
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
for eyes?
I don't even
I have
know
no
what it
idea.
is. What about ASMR? And so you can see now just how big the piece is getting and how it's just not going to be able to fit on the piece of masonite that we had originally planned to use. Sunflower is fitting the XPS pieces of XPS foam. She's carving and shaping it with the hot wire foam cutter to fit the road shape into the actual landscape.
For the pieces of foam you just saw, I traced them using the edge of the roadway. But once the roadway was glued in place, I used some paper and rubbed along the edge to create a template that I could use for cutting the other side.
Measuring and using templates or patterns are great practices when crafting. You'll get the most out of your material. Remember the old mantra, measure twice, cut once.
Pro tip, save all your scraps. They may come in handy.
Yes, scrap foam is your friend.
Here I had a little bit of extra foam that was in the way, so I cut it off so that I could use my newly cut larger pieces to fill in the space.
So we hope you've enjoyed this journey with us on making the Alyddel Tower. This is, as stated before, our first ever miniature terrain crafting project. So we hope you've enjoyed this.
We've learned a lot through this process, but there's a lot more to come. We'll see you
On the next one. Take one. Welcome to Sasquatch and Sunflower. I'm Sasquatch. Yeah, so
It's fine.
take two.
On the drums!
I have no rhythm at all. All right. Our first time attempting to make miniature terrain crafting.
What I was gonna say.
It started on a dark night with a cardboard tube and an idea. I'm Batman.
Moogie. What do you think of our tower? You gonna say anything? He's not pleased about my mess. Kind of disgruntled.
Probably there'll be more to come.